Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today I'm going to give you guys an update in the Jared Monroe, formerly known as Not Gay Jared, versus Louder with Crowder situation, because recently a defamation lawsuit was filed against Jared Monroe, and I think it's important, since the complaint is public, for us to go over it, for us to talk about it, and for us to explain why this is different from the previous lawsuits that were filed in relation to this whole matter. Now, we're going to get into it, but before we do, thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticeword.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
So you guys probably remember that I made an almost hour-and-a-half long video breaking down this whole situation between Jared Monroe and Louder with Crowder. I talked about Jared's video, I talked about Gerald, the CEO of Louder with Crowder's response video, and I broke down every single document that was presented in a video that not only holds up to this very day, but with some of these new updates, proves more true than when I released it at the time. Again, almost 90 days, and not one person has put out any refutation of any specific point in that video, and I'm incredibly proud of that. But as I said then, and I will repeat now, I'm not interested in Steven Crowder's divorce. I don't want to talk about his divorce. That is a personal, private matter. I would think we would all be better for not knowing what is going on in his personal life. So, just like before, we are only going to talk about the divorce in relation to this case, because unfortunately, they are tied into one another due to the allegations that Louder with Crowder is making against Jared. Now, some of you might be a little bit confused that I said that there is a new lawsuit, a defamation lawsuit, filed against Jared Monroe, because at the beginning of Gerald's response video, he said there was no lawsuit against Jared, but guess what? There is one right now, and it was filed today, and that was almost 90 days ago.
Jared, like I said, was raising money for a lawsuit that didn't even exist until this morning. It now exists because Jared has shown that he will continue to violate his NDA to be a part of this scheme to assimilate damaging PR assets to put pressure on Steven in the divorce.
Well, it turns out that that specific lawsuit for breach of contract has been dropped. And the reason likely why that has been dropped is because Jared is likely to win his National Labor Relations Board case based on previous precedent. And if you have a lawsuit that is meant to kind of silence an employee who's discussing an employment issue, you could end up paying damages. So that big lawsuit with all the fanfare completely dropped. It is irrelevant. And now we have that defamation suit. And in this defamation suit, you will see familiar allegations. As you can see from the top, plaintiff Louder with Crowder, LLC, files this original petition against Jared Metelo, that's his real name, the defendant, and alleges as follows. Louder with Crowder seeks monetary relief exceeding $1 million. Louder with Crowder requests that this court order discovery for this matter to be conducted under Level 3 of the Texas Rule of Civil Procedure 190.4. Now again, I will link the complaint in full in the description of this video, but there's essentially a summary of what Louder with Crowder is as a business, but I want to move on to the allegations, what Jared is being accused of, because I think this is the most prudent part. So read the whole thing if you like, but let's move on to the second page, because that's what we're going to talk about. So this is under Section A, which says defendant's extortion scheme. In October of 2023, Louder with Crowder became aware that defendant was one of many attempting to, quote, destabilize Crowder. More troubling is that the defendant joined a, quote, PR strategy to significantly threaten Crowder's public persona and brand. And this is what they call the extortion scheme. Even though defendant left Louder with Crowder years prior, the defendant jumped at the opportunity to further his own career at Louder with Crowder's detriment. Defendant's hatred and desire to damage Louder with Crowder is well documented, including defendant stating, quote, I just don't want Crowder, in brackets, anywhere near those kids. So these allegations might sound familiar to everybody out there in the audience, because they're the very same allegations that Gerald made in his response video to Jared almost 90 days ago, when he pretended he was citing from neutral court documents.
I'll show you all the receipts, guys. It's there. He's actively flirted with violations in the past, and now he's involving himself in a private divorce for which he was recruited to leverage the company as part of this long-standing plan. But you need to know the truth, and that's what's coming out today. All of this information's publicly available. Court documents, not opinion. Not saying I have receipts. and not providing them. I'm providing them for you right now.
When in reality, he was citing from a lawsuit that the company was filing against Hillary Crowder, one of her friends, and a bunch of members of her family. And I said in my video, where I read each and every document, which by the way, they only highlighted specific excerpts out of context in that particular video, that these were just that, allegations. And honestly, they looked pretty baseless to me. I called BS on that lawsuit. So I think it's important for me to tell you what happened to that particular case, because unlike this Jared case, the one we talked about before, where they were suing him, the one that Gerald announced at the beginning of that video, this case was not dropped. It was actually dismissed with prejudice, because the allegations of this grand Hillary conspiracy had no grounds. Because while you can put in an initial complaint out of context text messages here and there, when you're trying to run up legal costs on your wife through your business during a divorce, the court is not going to like that. Now, to be 100% fair to Steven Crowder and his legal team, this case was never meant to be real. It existed for two purposes. First and foremost, so that Gerald could say in his videos that he has neutral court documents, even though they were just allegations from the company that he was the CEO of, that proved all of the nonsense that he was saying. And B, this was obviously filed as a mechanism in order to apply pressure on Steven Crowder's soon-to-be ex-wife so that Steven can get better terms in the divorce. And again, this is not speculation on my part. We actually have a ruling from a judge, a neutral court document that orders the Crowder estate to pay additional money to Hillary Crowder above the mischaracterized $25,000 that was meant to be for her attorneys due to this additional complaint and other ways that Steven was running up legal costs on his wife. Now, a lot of dumb people will say, Sean, you keep believing the other side's allegations, but you don't believe Steven's allegations, when in reality, what I'm actually doing is disbelieving everybody's allegations and only going based on what the judge actually rules when these are brought up, not the baseless preliminary filings. And again, the document's right here on screen for you to see for yourself. Now, for those of you who are confused, when something is dismissed with prejudice, typically that means that the claims are so baseless they weren't even worth putting into a lawsuit. So that whole thing, that whole song and dance where they were citing all these different court documents which were just their allegations, ended up leading to a dismissal, again, with prejudice. So keep that in mind when you think of this defamation case, which has the same citations in it from that other lawsuit on how valid it is. But again, let's go back to the whole, Jared sent a message to Hillary Crowder in private saying that she doesn't want Steven near those kids, and that somehow is a part of extortion and or a part of some kind of defamation, even though it was a message stated in private. So the screenshot right here from Jared says, I think there's a scenario where several of us would be willing to attest to all of that. And then there's a message that is likely missing. It says, I just don't want him anywhere near those kids. That really disturbs me. And then it says, the defendant then doubled down on his horrific statement via social media, falsely and maliciously implying that Crowder is a danger to his own children, even criminally so. And then Jared's tweet is right here, and it says, I stand by this text to Hillary, and you would too if you knew what I do. Release my NDA, hashtag free Jared Monroe. Now look, like I said in my original video, you can feel whatever you want to feel about that private text message that Jared sent to Hillary. I will point out that we don't have the context for those messages, despite the fact that Steven Crowder cloned Hillary's entire phone, and he has the context of that message, so we would know what he was saying that several people would be willing to attest to if Steven actually released that. But this is not a defamatory statement, not even a little bit. And what's hilarious about this is that Steven took this private message, put it out there in the public, then Jared commented on his private message, and Steven is claiming that both the original statement and the Twitter post are defamatory, even though Louder with Crowder published these statements. They put it out there in the public. So he's saying these messages imply Crowder's a danger to his kids, even criminally so, but they published them. Now, I also want to add for context, because if this gets left out, as reported by Current Revolt, who was in the courtroom during the divorce proceedings. Again, I don't want to get into the divorce proceedings, but I think this context is important, that Hillary Crowder filed for shared custody with Steven Crowder, and Steven Crowder filed for sole custody of the children. So the only person who was trying to get full custody was Steven, not his wife. So Jared's opinion had nothing to do with the strategy of Hillary Crowder. Now, they cite a bunch of tweets as evidence that Jared was defaming him and implying criminality, which are people saying NDAs can't be used to cover crimes. If he abuses his children, just say it. And then there's a bunch of other tweets with the same effect, and Jared never approves of these tweets. So again, the implication is that Jared is alleging crimes against Steven Crowder, but as everybody stated, the NDA doesn't cover crimes, so Jared was probably not alleging crimes when he said he didn't want them near the kids. Again, an offhanded comment sent via text message that is indicative of an opinion, not an objective statement of fact, much less something that's defamatory, especially when, again, it was published by Steven Crowder. He put it out there.
February 21st, 2023, Jared says this to Hillary. I think there's a scenario where several of us would be willing to attest to all of that. I just don't want him anywhere near those kids. That really, really disturbs me.
Now we go on to the defamation and damages per se section, which is under the cause of action page. And it says as follows. Defendant published false and disparaging statements about Loudermilk Crowder to be published, which is an odd sentence. Defendant published false statements about Loudermilk Crowder and its managing member, Crowder, that were false, both in their particular facts, essence, implication, or gist in the context in which they were made. Defendant's defamatory publication constitutes defamation per se, as they implicate Loudermilk Crowder and its managing member, Crowder, in despicable criminal conduct. Alternatively, defendants' defamatory publications constitute defamation as they otherwise harmed Loudermilk Crowder's reputation and subjected Loudermilk Crowder to public contempt, disgrace, ridicule, or attack. Defendant acted with intent, negligence, and malice. Defendant's defamatory statements were made with reckless disregard for the truth of the statements, or they were made with knowledge of its falsity. Defendant publicly disseminated his defamatory statements to an enormous audience, causing significant harm to Loudermilk Crowder. Defendant's repeated disparagement has damaged Loudermilk Crowder in an amount that Loudermilk Crowder cannot reasonably calculate the dollar value of at this time. So you might be wondering, for those of you out there in the audience, where's the defamation? What is Steven even claiming was a defamatory statement? And I assure you, that's it. He is claiming a statement, a text message that Jared sent to his wife in private is defamation of character because it was published by Loudermilk Crowder, by the way, and then Jared quote tweeted the image later on. Therefore, that's the defamation. And if you think it sounds stupid that Loudermilk Crowder, the company, is suing Jared for defamation for a statement that they got in discovery from his private text messages, or actually from the private text messages of his wife, and chose to publish on their own network and then said damage them, then you're correct. This is stupid. This is one of the dumbest defamation cases I've ever seen, and honestly, it would be laughable except for the fact that this is a part of a lawfare strategy to run up the costs on Jared. And as we saw with the Illuminati case, Jared might not be a big enough public figure in order to get a slap dismissal against Crowder, thus causing him to have to pay the legal fees of Jared in this particular matter. So even though it's frivolous, it's stupid on its surface. The fact of the matter is, it has real consequences, but I just wanted you guys to see for yourself what Steven Crowder is filing behind the scenes, because supposedly he would never engage in lawfare, he would never do something like this, he would never do anything sketchy, when reality proves time and time again, he absolutely would. Now, I know eventually some of Steven Crowder's proxies are going to respond to this, they're going to start attacking Jared, people like Pearl Davis, etc., but one of the things that I want to point out about them is that they're also incredibly dishonest about how they obtain information, because while these complaints are public and I can give you guys an easy through line in order to find them, a lot of them are getting information that I believe was put together by Crowder's legal team and leaked to them, or actually attempted to be leaked to real journalists. They refused to bite on it and eventually ended up in the dredges of the internet with people like Pearl Davis. And unlike Steven Crowder, who just makes felonious allegations in his lawsuits, I actually have evidence of that because there was a Dropbox link that was made public on 4chan in July of 2023, and I realized that this is where Pearl is pulling most of her information that she claims is public. But one of the interesting things about this is that when you go into section 3, which is a transcript from June of 2023, you find out that the transcript you're looking at is from the respondent. It says it right at the bottom. And in fact, Crowder's legal team, because he was the respondent in that case, paid $1,200+ for it. On top of that, if you guys are aware or familiar with the nanny video, her deposition, where Pearl forgot to redact the address of the nanny, the name of her husband and all that, and just left it in there because she was too lazy, well, that original video is actually contained in that very same 4chan document leak. In fact, there's a transcript that accompanies that, and one of the things that I noticed about that on around page 23 or 24, I'll put it right up here on screen, is that there's highlighter marks from the physical copy to which this was taken from. And it appears that this is also, although we don't have the same citation, that same page that says it's the respondent's document, from Louder with Crowder's team, basically based on what is highlighted, what they wanted to say is important. By the way, that same audio file that Pearl talks about, where Hillary Crowder allegedly admits that Crowder wasn't abusive at all or anything like that, is also contained in this Dropbox file that, again, is a dossier that's put together and has leaks directly from Crowder's side. Now, whether it's him himself, whether it's people at Louder with Crowder, whether it's his legal team, or whether there's an off chance that somebody just broke in and happened to steal these specific documents from whoever on the Crowder team has this unreported break-in and theft of his divorce documents, because again, they are in fact Crowder's copies of the documents, at least one of the transcripts for sure. That remains to be seen, but I'm curious if this theft happened, if somebody broke in and stole these intimate documents from his lawyer's office, from his office, from his company's office, why there was no police report, why there were no charges, and why it was carefully crafted and assembled in a dossier that is meant to aid Steven Crowder, including the fact that it was titled as an exclusive and clearly and obviously something that was shopped around to media outlets in order to get his side of the story out there. Now, like I said, I don't want to get into his divorce. I hope honestly that it's settled at this moment in time, although there has yet to be an announcement for it. But the fact of the matter is, one person or one party is consistently showing themselves to be shady. They're constantly alleging everybody else is shady. And while we can all point to their initial filings, even though they're just that, initial filings, nobody seems to do the follow-up and point out that they keep getting dismissed or dropped later on when people stop paying attention. But with all that being said, the defamation case as presented is absurd on its face. I'm sorry, you cannot take somebody's private messages, put them out there in the public on your own media platform, then throw all kinds of accusations at that person of being a part of a grand conspiracy, and then when they comment on it, that they stand by it, then imply that they defamed you somehow by standing by the statement that you published. And you can't imply that they publish it or accuse them of publishing it when you put it out first. It's an absurdity on top of an absurdity, an abuse of the legal system. And considering Steven Crowder is one among many that are facing a defamation lawsuit right now, you would think that he would know better. Considering Steven Crowder has been punished by the YouTube gods and all these different various places for his political opinions, for his personal opinions, that he wouldn't be so quick to try to inflict punishment on his enemies for their opinions. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute insanity of this defamation suit. Till next time.